Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to share with you a review of the new KKW Beauty x Mario eyeshadow palette. I'm also going to be comparing it to the Kylie Royal Peach palette. I'll let you know shade comparisons and formula comparisons. Also a tutorial on today's eye look. So if you guys are interested to hear my thoughts about this palette, seeing swatches, and how I got my makeup look today using it, then just keep on watching. KKW Beauty x Mario palette is a $45 palette. It is currently sold out on the KKW Beauty website, but all her products always get restocked pretty frequently, so I'm sure it's going to be restocked really soon. So you do get 10 shades in this palette and also a mirror. You get 4 matte shades, 4 shimmer shades, and then 2 kind of satin shades that have a little bit of a sheen to them. And then in this palette you get 0.6 of an ounce total, 0.60 ounces total. So this is actually the same amount of product and the same price as the Kylie Cosmetics Royal Peach palette. So that's kind of interesting. This actually has 2 more shades than the Mario palette. This has 12 shades to it, but you do actually get the same amount of product for the same price, $45. This one comes with a little brush too that I definitely lost at some point. So you get the same amount of product, same price point between the Kylie and KKW palette. The Kylie palette is obviously a lot bigger, but once you actually get into the eyeshadows, you do get just as much eyeshadow in both. So I'm gonna go ahead and swatch all the shades in this palette and then show you guys comparisons to the Kylie palette and let you know my thoughts about the formula of both of them, how they compare to each other. All right, so starting off with the top row, the first shimmer shade is called 2008, and this shade is actually pretty glittery, so swatch is really pretty, but it's also something that has a lot of fallout to it. It's what's in my inner corner today, so it's not gonna swatch super pigmented because it is a little bit more of a chunky shade. Next we have this bronzy shade called Glam. This is a beautiful shade, really pigmented, super pretty, very foiled, very metallic, very pigmented. I love it. And then the third shade is the lightest transition shade, and it's called Miami. It's more of like just like a medium neutrally brown. It's a little bit kind of warm too. Really like that shade. I have all the matte shades on my eye today. And then next we have this gold shade Armenian, which is another foiled, really metallic shade. So this is Armenian. Then lastly on the top row we have this shade Loyalty, which is this cool tone, dark brown. It has a little bit of a grayish hint to it. It's also really pigmented. And I have it in my outer corner today too. So that is all the shades in the top row, all of the really neutrally shades. So moving into the bottom row, we have this shade Decade, which is kind of like an eggshell beigey color. And that is obviously the lightest shade in the palette. I have it on my brow bone today. It's super light. Next we have this reddish brown shade called Albanian, which is more of a warm kind of transition shade too. I have basically all the matte shades on my eye today. So next we have this purple shade Vegas, and this does have more of like a satin finish to it. It does have a little bit of shimmer to it, but it's not as metallic as the other shades, and it's more of like an eggplant color. It's not super purple. Then this blue shade is called Libra, and this is probably the shade that's actually the least pigmented out of all of like the shimmery shades. It actually swatches quite nicely, but once you do go to apply it onto your eye, you can see that it kind of starts to sheer out a little bit. So you do need to pack it up quite a bit. And then lastly, we have this shade Bronzy, which is super metallic, super pigmented, super foiled. It just goes on like very creamy, almost like wet, kind of like some of these other top metallic shades. It's a gorgeous color. You don't need any like Fix Plus or anything with it. It just goes on super pigmented. So those are all the shades. Really, the purple shade is probably the only one that I wish was just a little bit more purple, just because it does kind of turn into a bit more of a brown. I feel like it could be a lot less subtle. I wish it was as vibrant as the blue shade. But other than that, I'm still going to use every single shade in here. There's not a shade I would avoid because of the formula or anything. I've been playing with every single shade in here. I haven't had any issues with them. So those are all the shades in the palette. Let me go ahead and compare them to some of the shades in the Kylie Royal Peach palette. So here are some of the shade similarities between the Royal Peach palette, which is on this side, and then here are all the KKW Beauty shades. I'm sorry, I like ran out of arm for this one. But you can see there's some similarities for sure. There's 5 shades in both palettes that are kind of like similar tones. but they're definitely not identical. None of the shades are identical, so both of them have this like warm brownish shade. That's probably the most similar, honestly, between both palettes. That looks like the most similar, but you can see there's a little bit difference between both of the undertones. And then the lighter shimmer shade in both are quite different. The Kylie Royal Peach one is definitely a lot more bronzy and copper, and then this shade has more of like a goldish hint to it. And then the darker matte like reddish shade is a lot more peachy in the Royal Peach palette compared to more of like that terracotta kind of brick tone in the KKW Beauty palette. The blues are definitely very, very different. The Royal Peach one is matte, so it's a different finish, and then it's a lot deeper of a blue shade, while the KKW Beauty one has more of like that aqua blue kind of lighter tone to it. It has like a couple different shifts to it compared to the Royal Peach one, so you're definitely not going to get that same blue look with both palettes. And then at the end we have two of the more bronzy tones. The Kylie Royal Peach one is definitely a lot more peachy compared to the KKW Beauty palette. So here's what both palettes look like together. They do have some similarities, and I'm trying to stay like in frame but still show you guys the palettes, but they do have some similarities to them, especially if you're just kind of focusing on the blue shade and some of those like lighter goldish coppery tones. But if you look at the mattes, you're getting more neutral mattes, darker tones with the KKW Beauty palette. The Royal Peach palette definitely has a lot more like springier, pastel, lighter, and of course peachy shades. There's not anything peach about the KKW Beauty palette, so they are quite different. If you have both, you're not going to get the same eye look with both palettes. You can get similar looks, but definitely not like identical looks whatsoever. Formula wise, the KKW Beauty palette definitely is so much better. And I do actually like the Royal Peach palette. I did declutter a couple other Kylie palettes, but I wanted to keep the Royal Peach palette because I did enjoy this one for a while. I don't use it much anymore, but I don't have any issues with the formula, but it's definitely not like an amazing formula. The KKW Beauty one definitely feels a lot more high-end. The mattes are definitely a lot creamier, even just swatching this, and I did compare them both like on my eyes over the past couple of days just to see the difference just applying them. But even just swatching it again now, the Royal Peach shades, the shimmers are definitely not as vibrant. They don't look as firmly pressed or as foiled, just like when you go to swatch them. And also the matte shades are a little bit chalkier, a little bit more powdery. So with the Royal Peach palette, you're going to need to build up the shadows a little bit more, and you're going to get more fallout with both the mattes and the shimmers. So just like a comparison to the Kylie formula, definitely think that the KKW formula is a lot better. I'm happy I purchased this palette. I definitely think that it's worth the $45. But let me go ahead into this tutorial so you guys can see how I got this eye look today using the KKW Beauty Mario palette. Alright, so I'm going to start off with the shade Decade, and I'm just going to use that to set my eyes. I did already set my eyes with powder, but just to have like a little bit of a lighter base, and that way it could also be my brow bone highlight. Then I'm using the shade Miami, the light brown matte shade, as a transition shade. And what I'm going to do, because it's not like the lightest transition shade ever, I'm going to apply it, I'm just using my Sigma E40, and I'm just going to go in super, super lightly and just build that up in my upper crease. So once I kind of have a base with that transition shade, I'm just going to go back in with that same shade again and just use the edge of my brush and really pack it into the outer edge. I'm basically going to use all the matte shadows, but I really want to layer all the transition shades first. That way when I apply like the blue, it's on a good base, so I don't need to do like too much blending. And I'm going in with the reddish brown shade Albanian. I'm just using a denser crease brush. I'm just going to pack that more so to the outer edge. It is more of a warm shade, but I just want to add some depth to it. I'm also adding the shade Loyalty, which is more of like a cool tone dark brown shade. And I'm just taking a smaller blending brush, and I'm just going to pack that onto the outer edge. I really want to deepen up the outer corner. Once I do go in with the lid color, all of these transition shades that are on my lid are going to be covered up, but I just want to add like that gradient effect by having a darker base underneath. So I'm going in with the blue shade Libra, and I'm going to apply this with a dry brush just so you guys can see the pigmentation. But I definitely am going to wet my brush with Fix Plus. I just want to show you what it looks like dry first. So far dry, we are getting some color payoff, but it can definitely be a lot more dramatic. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my brush. And then with some Fix Plus, you're also going to get more of like a satin look to the shadow, so that way there's a little bit more dimension to it. Going in with Libra on the other side, and I just went in with Fix Plus right away. You can see how bold that color looks. It's like straight blue pigment. I did really wet my brush because I wanted the blue to pop a lot on my lid. So then I'm going in with this silver shade 2008, and this shade definitely has the most fallout in the whole palette out of all the shades. So I do definitely need to wet my brush, and then I'm just packing the shadow on to my brush and just kind of packing it onto my eye. So you guys can probably see it looks like really glittery, which is really pretty, but it's also gonna have that fallout. All right, so I added brown to my lower lash line. I am gonna go in with a blue shadow, or the blue shadow in the palette. I didn't wanna add blue in my waterline. I thought it would be like a lot of blue going on. So I'm going back in with the brown shade Miami and just using a smudge brush on my lower lash line. And I'll add a little bit of Libra just to like where my lash line basically, but I don't want to carry it down, just to have like a little hint of blue right there. Alright guys, so this is the eyeshadow pretty much done. I don't think I'm going to add anything else to it. I added like 7 shades already, so I think it's pretty much done. I'm going to go in with my Cocoa lashes in Misha. They're a little bit smaller lashes, not super dramatic, but I don't really want to cover up the eye look either, so I'm going to add those, some mascara, and then finish up with my review. Alright, so here is the completed eye look. It didn't take too much effort, especially for a colorful look. I didn't really have to like blend forever and ever or anything, and I have been wearing this palette for a couple days. I've been trying out all the other shades, and it's something I've really enjoyed using. I did also do a neutral look on my Instagram. I will link that in my description box if you guys want to see something that's more of like a bronzy eye look. But definitely, even for like an everyday palette, it's really quick and easy to use. To me, there's not really any shade missing in here. If you do have more of a fair complexion, you might want more of a lighter transition shade. But what I did was just go in really light with that third shade. I think it's Miami, the lighter brown shade. And that was a little bit easier for me. But otherwise, I think this will work on a lot of different complexions, because especially those metallic shades are very pigmented. They're going to show up on a lot of skin tones. And I do wish that the blue and the purple shade in here were more of that metallic foiled formula. I think they just need a little bit more pop to them, especially because they are like the colorful shades in this palette, but you do need to build them up just slightly. Like I would use Fix Plus with both of those shades every time. The other metallic shades are gorgeous, but overall I am really happy with the formula. This is a palette that I'll definitely be wearing in upcoming videos and just continue to use like over and over again, because I really do like the formula. I really like the shades in here. I was a little bit nervous about the formula, how it was going to be after getting the first KKW release, the contour sticks. That was the last thing that I purchased from KKW Beauty, was like her first launch ever. That was something I definitely regretted buying, just because it was like very average and overpriced to me. This is something I'm so much happier with. I think that $45 is definitely an okay price for it. This is up there with like all my other high-end palettes, probably better than some of them, honestly. And I will say, when I first opened this, I was a little bit underwhelmed by the packaging, because it's a little bit hard to read the name of the actual palette. It reminds me so much of the Lorac 2 palette, but I kind of got over it quickly because it's a very like compact palette. It's very easy to use. I kind of wish that there was like a little bit more special packaging to it, because it is a big deal with Mario, but I think overall the palette speaks for itself, the colors speak for itself, and it is very practical in general. There's nothing like extra to it. And I also almost forgot to mention that I do have a giveaway right now on my channel where you guys can win one of these palettes. It's going to be open for like another week and a half. So definitely check that out if you guys want to enter to win. It will be linked in my description box. But that is everything for today's video. Definitely let me know your thoughts about this palette in the comments down below. If you guys like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And I'll talk to you guys soon in my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.